right, we're recording. Trying something new, guys. I'm trying a lot of different things new to see what is most comfortable for me right now. I'm still in physical therapy 3 times a week. So trying to figure out what is the best, whether it be my webcam, whether it be Google Meets, whether it be my camera. So the next few videos are going to be on different things and see how they turn out. Today's video is going to be on the Murdaugh murders again. I watched the Netflix series, so half of this is going to be about the Netflix series, and then half of it's going to be about the defense's case, and then they rest. I have not watched today's, so I will catch that up tonight and do another one tomorrow. Okay, so the Netflix movies. If you guys have not watched this Netflix documentary, it's Murdaugh murders. What is it? A Southern disgrace or something, to Southern scandal, something to that effect, on Netflix. It is incredibly powerful because we get to hear from all of the people who were involved with the boating accident. The kids that were in the boat, the parents of the kids that were in the boat, a newspaper reporter, several different people. People who actually knew these people and had seen the progression of the stuff that they've gotten away with. I knew about it, but actually watching that documentary, it was like, oh man, this is some powerful stuff. I'm not going to tell you everything that's in it, but I am going to discuss some key points of it. If you have not watched it, it's definitely a go-to. It starts out by talking about how they had 5 bodies that was associated with that family in 6 years. 5 dead bodies in 6 years. And most of this is circumstantial, but I think there's something to it. A Southern scandal, that's what it's called. Murdaugh murders, a Southern scandal. Listening to the kids talk about that night and everything that went down, to me was very chilling. It was almost like you were there. Did they have some responsibility too as well? Yes. Everyone that got on that boat, knowing that he was drunk, and they had been drinking all day. I think all of them were underage. Well, I know they were all underage because Paul was buying alcohol with his brother's ID. So everybody that got on the boat that night were to blame for their own destiny, was the way I see it. If you get in a car with someone that you know is absolutely drunk, shit-faced, you don't think they can drive, and you still get in a car with them, that's taking your own life at your own risk. So, and I think that's what these kids did that night. And I say kids, I think they were all 19, around that age. But they're still kids. It talks about how the Murdaughs, I can't pronounce their name, Murdaughs, I think is how you pronounce it, had both sides of the legal aspect locked down. You have Alec, who is assistant solicitor, which is like an assistant district attorney. He didn't always work for the district attorney's office. I think he said he handled 6 cases, 6 prosecution cases. But he still had an in the fact that the solicitor's office started with his great-grandfather. And then it was his grandfather. And then it was his dad. So they've got the prosecution side, I think, locked down because everybody over there knows the Murdaugh name and what it represents. And I believe in a Southern town, you're going to find, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. In any of that stuff. I totally agree with that. So they had that locked down. Then they had the civil litigation locked down. Alec and his brother Randy were both civil attorneys. So they had the legal system, in my opinion, locked down on both sides. One thing that has not come up, because it's probably not relevant, but I thought it was one more aspect to the kind of lifestyle that these people were leading. They had their own private plane. From the looks of what was on the Netflix series, it was a two-seater plane, but they had their own plane, their own runway at that property, the Murdaugh property. And they had a hangar that the runway went right into the hangar. Allegedly, there was some dirty dealings going on with that, but I'm not going to get into that because I have no proof of it, and I don't think it adds anything to it. Morgan, which was Paul's girlfriend at the time of the boating accident, is talking about the dynamics of the Murdaugh family. And from what she was saying, Buster was always the golden child, and Paul was always the one getting into trouble. That if there was trouble to be found, he would find it, and that his parents were constantly bailing him out of trouble, whereas Buster was the golden child. She says that Maggie was not attentive to Paul as a mother, that she wasn't as loving towards Paul as she was towards Buster. And if any of you have ever lived in a family like that, where one person has their picks, and I think it happens a lot in the southern states. I know it happened with my family. That's why I've always tried to treat my children the same no matter what. Like if I'm going to do something for one, I'm going to do it for all three, or I'm not going to do it for any of them. From what Morgan is saying, that dynamic was that Paul was basically the black sheep of the family. Buster went to law school and wanted the same lifestyle that his dad had. This is all coming from Morgan. Buster actually got kicked out of law school for plagiarism. That came out in the Netflix series. Morgan said that Paul clung to Miss Gloria, which was the housekeeper that was killed. She said Paul clung to her because Maggie wasn't mothering towards him, whereas Gloria was. And so he clung to Gloria as if she were a mother figure. She was the nanny, she was the maid. The Murdaughs were well known to let the kids drink, even friends of their kids, whether it be at the hunting cabin or at parties or fun, whatever they were doing. They allowed their kids to drink and whoever else was around them. And I think that plays a large part into how a 19-year-old could get so shit-faced and still be functioning a little bit because he was used to drinking. He drank all the time. Morgan said that every time Paul would get in trouble, the first person he would call would be his grandfather. And then his grandfather would call his dad, and then they would work together to get him out of whatever trouble he was in. And then it would just disappear like it never even happened. Morgan tells of one time they were coming home from a Christmas party, and she got in the truck to drive. And he got pissed off and said, "What are you doing?" "I'm driving my truck." And she's like, "You've been drinking. Let me drive home. So I can drive my own effing truck," whatever. He gets mad at her, pushes her out of the way. He gets in the driver's seat. She gets in the truck with him. Well, on the way home, he crashes the truck. She gets out of the truck first because it flips, it rolls. She gets out of the truck first and she gets her phone and she calls 911. Well, about the time that they connected with the cell phone, Paul grabs the phone out of her hand, hangs up, and throws the phone. and then starts cussing her, telling her that she's going to get him locked up, that he's got it under control. She doesn't need to call 911. He called his mom or his dad. And she said shortly after, his mom and dad showed up, and the first thing they did was started getting all the guns out of the truck. Now, we've heard throughout this trial that Paul always had several guns in his truck at all times. So they start getting all the guns out of the truck because he's 19, so he's not legal to be walking around with them. Or maybe he is in South Carolina. I don't know what the age is there because I'm thinking drinking, but I don't know how much it is to what the age is to be able to carry a firearm. But anyway, the first thing they did was start getting all of the rifles and guns out of his car, out of his truck. Then they went to getting all the beer cans and anything related to alcohol out of his truck, out of the front of his truck, out of the bed of his truck, clean that up completely and put it in their vehicles before the cops and the wreckers got called to come out and get the truck. And of course, Paul was driving, you know how that goes. So it just disappeared. It went away. Nobody ever got charged with anything. And I have to say, I know somebody like this that has just been dog ass lucky that they have wrecked 3 or 4 vehicles while being drunk and never got caught because the cops were never called. Their friends always bailed them out. But what's going to happen is that person's going to go on to kill somebody, and the family's going to be devastated, and this person is probably going to end up in jail at some point. But Paul never did because he didn't get the chance before he got murdered. Let's see. Morgan also talks about the fact that Paul got physical with her a lot. The night of the boating accident, it did come out in court that he spit on her, he slapped her, and called her an effing whore. The night of the boating accident because she was trying to get him to let somebody else drive. So he to me, it just screams spoiled, rotten kid with no consequences. There's so much information in this documentary. It's a 3-part documentary. And there's so much in it, and it comes directly from the people that were involved, the kids that were in the boat, the parents of the kids that were in the boat. It's got police cam video, body cam video from the police the night of the accident. I think it has a nurse or 2 in it. I don't know, but it's everybody that's in it was involved with the Murdaughs in some way. It starts with Gloria's death. Rumors are that she knew too much about Alex's pill addiction, that she found his pills, found his stash, whatever, and that she would talk to Paul about it because she didn't feel like she could go to Maggie about it because she didn't feel like Maggie would listen to her. And the big policy that paid out on Gloria's death was only taken out a month before this happened because he had one policy. Well, then when Gloria died, he told the boys, you need to sue my homeowners or whatever. He not only had the one, but he had another mega policy. I think that could go up to like $5 million. And they did end up getting $500,000 and $5,000 from the smaller one and $3.5 million from the larger one. And the boys did eventually get their money. I read that on Twitter from their lawyer, who is also representing some of the other people, I think, in the civil stuff. And the boys did finally get their money. All right. So that is the main point. But it's once I started watching it, I couldn't stop. It was just full of suspense. Um, Listening to the parents of these kids, what went on that night, the fact that the police did not even call uh, Mallory's parents that night, even though um, Anthony was the boyfriend. His mother went to the cops and said, I have the number for her mom. Y'all need to call her mom. I don't want to be the one to make that call. And the cop says, we're not going to do that right now because she'll just come down here and cause problems and get in the way and this and that. And this is all on body cam. So they didn't even bother to call her freaking parents that night. While everybody else had been called because their kids were in the hospital. So they had all been called. But Mallory's parents had not been called. So it's a good documentary to watch. It hits home and makes some of this stuff a little bit more understandable, and trying to think of the word. I don't even know when I'm sitting here making faces, y'all. Sorry about that. It just makes the whole picture a lot more clear. It talks about all the different people, from Stephen, the kid that was killed in the middle of the road, the housekeeper, was it Stephen, the housekeeper? Who was the other? Because they said 5 bodies. So there was Gloria, Stephen, Paul, Maggie. I don't remember who the fifth body was. Anyway, I'm wasting time on that. I'll get back to that. So, back to the trial. This is yesterday's. I've seen so many different, and this comes out in that documentary too, and this is the one thing that I don't believe to be true, and I'll tell you why. It says that there were reports that Maggie had hired a financial forensic examiner to examine their finances, and that she had spoke with an attorney about a divorce. Now, if that were true, those people would have been on the stand. You would have had questions for those people, and they would have proven that to be a fact. They have not even brought that up other than in the opening argument, but they have no proof or have not talked about it throughout the whole trial. So I believe that not to be. She may have been considering a divorce, but I don't know. I don't think she would have given up the lifestyle that she had either. Okay, that's weird. I just thought I heard somebody walk behind me. Alex testifying. I don't think it necessarily helped him or hurt him. The only thing that I would say that brought me pause was when he admitted to being at the kennels. Because if the timeline is correct, which I believe the timeline to be correct, especially nowadays when you have these kids that are on their cell phones 24/7, and it all of a sudden goes dark and never opens up again. I think that the timeline is correct. When all of the cell phone data stopped from Maggie and Paul at the same time, never to open again, I think that was huge. I think that was the time of death, even though the coroner or whoever did that screwed it up. Because in order to get the time of death, you're supposed to do a rectal thermometer. That wasn't done. He said he put his hands underneath the armpit or something to that effect. So, but I believe that the time of death was when the cell phones stopped. So I don't think it helped him or hurt him. He was pretty emotional when talking about Maggie and Paul, but yet he was very stoic and clapping back at the prosecution and basically trying to out-lawyer them. And I think in some areas he did a pretty good job of that. So I don't think it necessarily hurt him or helped him. Now, it did hurt him in the financial crimes. And that's what I don't understand is he knew that they were going to be cross-examining him about all the financial crimes. And so he's on record admitting to that. So even if he's not convicted of this, he's going to be convicted of all the financial charges, which is still going to carry probably life in prison when they add everything up. So I don't know why he actually testified. I don't think it hurt him in this case, but I think it hurt him in future cases. All right. The defense, of course, they call the experts of their own to dispute the blood evidence, to dispute the coroner's report, to dispute the crime scene analysis, and the direction of the shot. That's one thing they keep saying, that one of the shots went through Paul's arm up into his jaw, up into his head, which blew his brains out, literally. They weren't completely intact, but for the most part they were, is what they were saying. And he said that that's not the case, that the shooter actually came from the head and went down and out the arm, because the pellets were going downwards instead of upwards. He also said that whoever did it was most likely injured or at least stunned at the time, because it's close contact from what he's saying, and that there would have been blowback particles of the skull, brain matter, pellets from the shotgun. And so he thinks that whoever shot Paul was probably stunned enough that he couldn't have went and got another gun and killed Maggie in the way that they're saying that it was done. So that in his opinion, there had to have been two shooters, which they know some pretty he knows some pretty shady people. So I wouldn't put it past somebody else being out there with him. Sorry guys, I'm looking at my notes and I'm actually getting way ahead of myself. He said that Paul was probably shot first. And like I said, that he's saying Paul was probably shot first, and whoever did it was probably stunned enough to not be able to get the second rifle with the second shot to Maggie. So therefore, there must have been two shooters. The jury will be taking a field trip. It looks like at some point they will be going to the scene of the crime. Prosecution did not want this. Defense asked for it. Prosecution argued that it wasn't necessary, that things had changed since then. It's been 2-3 years and the trees are taller and fuller and it's a different time of year. So there's more. Anyway, they didn't want it. They did not want, for whatever reason, they did not want the jury to go out there and see it. But the judge said, as long as one of the attorneys requested, he would make sure that it happened. And so the defense did request it. He agreed. So at some point they will be taking a field trip I don't think there's going to be any cameras. Um, I think that it's going to be Alex Murdaugh, his attorneys, the prosecution, and the judge and a court reporter. I think is all that will go out there. They say the defense says that they're going to arrest by the end of the day, which they did, and that prosecution said they have a couple of rebuttal witnesses that won't take long. One will take a little bit of time, but they foresee arresting by the end of today. Then I figure the field trip will probably happen tomorrow. And then closing arguments. What is tomorrow? Wednesday? So closing arguments Thursday. I think by Friday that the jury will have this case for deliberation. We'll see how that goes. The judge says that he's going to instruct the jurors that things have changed a bit, certain things out at the place that the murders took place at. Sorry, guys, I'm losing it here for a minute. That he'll explain to them and describe to them what has changed so that they have some knowledge of that. John Marvin, Alex's brother, testified. He had a couple of interesting things. I don't think that it helped or hurt Alex either way, but he said that when they were all up at the house, somebody had mentioned that you have a Find My Phone app or something like that on your phone, and they were looking for Maggie's phone. And so John Marvin went and found Buster and said, do you have this app on your phone? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, pull it up. So he pulled it up and was able to get a direct location of Maggie's phone. So he went back down to the kennels, talked to one of the officers, the sled officers, showed them Buster's phone and said, this is where Maggie's phone's at. And I thought you guys would want the coordinates or whatever. And he tells John Marvin, don't worry about it. I've got people coming out here tonight that's going to handle all of that. Just don't worry about it right now. Well, that set John Marvin back, and he's like, what? So he went to one of the solicitors or someone from the solicitor's office that was out there and showed them. And he's like, don't you think that we need to go get her phone like as soon as possible? And the attorney for the solicitor's office said, yeah, absolutely. So they ended up getting in the car together and going and finding Maggie's phone. He said the lawyer didn't touch it. They called dispatch right away, told them where the phone was, put up tape around everything so nobody would touch the phone. So when they say that it was found on the way to Alex's parents' house where he went, it was, but it was not far from the house. So it would have been possible for whoever committed this crime to throw it out in that area just as easy as it would have been for Alex. But his car shows that he was going 80 something miles an hour, slowed down to 40, and that's exactly where they found the phone. So I still think he threw it out. He also described how the next day when he went down there and the scene was released, that he felt like he needed to go down to the kennels, and he went down there and nothing had been cleaned up yet. So he took it upon himself to start cleaning that up so that Alex and Buster didn't have to see it or deal with it. And he talks about breaking down several times, but he promised Paul that he was doing that for him and that he would find his killer. And him and Paul were very close. Paul works for him. So that was kind of hard, and I never really thought about it because, well, there's people that actually get paid to go in and clean up crime scenes like that for the family, so the family doesn't have to do it. But again, at that time, they're not thinking straight. He just goes down there, he finds the um, the scene the way it is, and wants to get it cleaned out so his brother and his nephew don't have to deal with it. He was the last witness, and the defense rested. Um, how do I feel right now? I'm still not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. I think he did it, but I still have doubt that he could have done it alone. I think if he did do it, that there was somebody else involved with him. I don't see the reasoning. The motive that the defense is, or prosecution is using, is that he was so financially in trouble, and that if Paul's case went to court, that his financials would come out, and then everybody would know how bad his financials were, and that all of the stealing that he did was probably going to come out. And so he had to kill Paul for that reason. And Maggie just happened to be there. I don't buy it. He didn't have life insurance on either one of them, which is something that's odd because my husband's the breadwinner in our family. I don't work anymore. I do this for my fun stuff. Um, but Maggie didn't work, from what I understood. So Alex is a breadwinner. But even at that, my husband has life insurance on me. It's not much. It's enough to bury me. Um, Whereas if he goes, he has this humongous policy to take care of me, whatever. But Alex didn't have life insurance on his kid or his wife. I've got life insurance on all of my grandchildren because if God forbid something happened, that's the last thing I want their parents to have to worry about. That money would go to their parents to take care of the burial. So that kind of strikes me funny as him being an attorney and not even having a policy on Maggie. Just sounds unbelievable. Um, the fact that I don't think that SLED did a good job in the investigation. I don't think they did a thorough search of everything. They let everybody in and out of the property while everything was going on. I just don't think it was very well controlled. So I do have some doubt there about why they didn't do more of a thorough investigation. It's almost like they were trying to throw everybody off. But I don't know. Just my opinion. Right now, I think it's going to be a hung jury. I said there's got to be at least one person on that jury that is thinking the cops screwed this up and got the wrong person. We'll see. But I honestly think it's going to be a hung jury, and then have to go through everything all over again. So that's what it is. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to get caught up on today's. I'll have another one out tomorrow. Hopefully, I have physical therapy tomorrow, so I don't do too good when I come home from that. So we'll see how that goes. So that's all for right now. You guys have a great night, and as always, much love.